Sermon 2 on Luke 10:38. I have begun with a few words in Latin that are written in the Gospel, and in German this means, Our Lord Jesus Christ went up into a little town and was received by a virgin who was a wife. Now notice carefully what this says. It must necessarily be that the person by whom Jesus was received was a virgin. Virgin is as much to say a person who is free of all alien images, as free as he was when he was not. Observe that people may ask how a man who has been born and has advanced to the age of reason could be as free of all images as when he was nothing. He who knows so many things that are all images. How then can he be free? Keep in mind this distinction, which I want to make clear for all of you. If I were so rational that there were present in my reason all the images that all men had ever received, and those that are present in God Himself, and if I could be without possessiveness in their regard, so that I had not seized possessively upon any one of them, not in what I did or in what I left undone, not looking to past or to future, but I stood in this present moment, free and empty, according to God's dearest will, performing it without ceasing, then truly I should be a virgin, as truly unimpeded by any images as I was when I was not. But I say that because a man is a virgin, that does not deprive him at all of any of the works he has ever done. But all this permits him to remain maidenly and free, without any obstacles between him and the supreme truth, just as Jesus is empty and free and maidenly in himself. As the authorities say that only between equals can unity be produced, so must a man be a maid and a virgin who is to receive the maidenly Jesus. Now, mark what I say and pay careful attention. For if a man were to be a virgin forever, no fruit would come of him. If he is to become fruitful, he must of necessity be a wife. Wife is the noblest word one can apply to the soul, which much nobler than virgin. That a man conceives God in himself is good, and in his conceiving he is a maiden. But that God should become fruitful in him is better. For the only gratitude for a gift is to be fruitful with the gift. And then the Spirit is a wife, in its gratitude giving birth in return, when he, for God, gives birth again to Jesus in the heart of the Father. Many good gifts are received in virginity and are not born again in wifely fruitfulness with grateful praise to God. The gifts all spoil and turn to nothing, so that the man is no better or more blessed because of them. So his virginity is no profit to him, because he is not, in addition to his virginity, a wife with all her fruitfulness. That is where the trouble is. This is why I have said, Jesus went up into a little town and was received by a virgin who was a wife. This must necessarily be so, as I have shown. Married people seldom produce in a year more than one fruit. But I am now talking about a different kind of married people, about all those who are possessively attached to prayer, to fasting, to vigils, and to all kinds of exterior exercises and penances. Every attachment to every work deprives one of the freedom to wait upon God in the present, and to follow him alone in the light with which he would guide you in what to do and what to leave alone, free and renewed in every present moment. As if this were all that you had ever had or wanted or could do. Every attachment or every work you propose deprives you again and again of this freedom, and is what I now call a year, because your soul produces no fruit unless it performs the work to which you have been so attached. And you have no trust, not in God or in yourself, unless you have performed the work on which you seized with such possessiveness, and otherwise you have no peace. That is why you too produce no fruit unless you perform your work. This is what I reckon as a year, and your fruit is small indeed, because it has been produced out of attachment to the work and not out of freedom. And I call these married people because they are pledged to possessiveness. They produce little fruit, and what they do produce is small indeed, as I have said. A virgin who is a wife is free and unpledged, without attachment. She is always equally close to God and to herself. She produces much fruit, and it is great, neither less nor more than is God himself. This virgin who is a wife brings this fruit and this birth about, and every day she produces fruit 100 or 1,000 times, yes, more than can be counted, giving birth and becoming fruitful from the noblest ground of all. Or, to put it better, from that same ground where the Father is bearing his eternal word, from that ground is she fruitfully bearing with him. For Jesus, the light and the reflection of the fatherly heart, St. Paul says that he is the glory and the reflection of the fatherly heart, and with his power he illumines completely the fatherly heart. This Jesus is united with her, and she with him, and she shines and glows with him as one in oneness, and as a pure, bright light in the fatherly heart. And I have often said that there is a power in the soul that touches neither time nor flesh. It flows from the Spirit and remains in the Spirit and is wholly spiritual. In this power, God is always verdant and blossoming in all the joy and the honor that he is in himself. That is a joy so heartfelt, a joy so incomprehensible and great that no one can tell it all. For it is in this power that the eternal Father ceaselessly brings his eternal Son so to birth, that this power also is bearing the Son of the Father, and bearing itself, that same Son, in the single power of the Father. If a man possessed the whole kingdom, or all the riches of the earth, and gave up the whole of it for the love of God, and became one of the poorest men that had ever lived on earth, and if God gave him as much to suffer as he had ever given any man, and if he suffered it all until his death, and if God had then gave him one single glimpse of what God is in this power, his joy would be so great that all this suffering and poverty would be too little. Yes, even if, after this, God never gave the kingdom of heaven, he still would have received a great gift. He still would have received a reward great enough for all that he has ever suffered. For God is present in this power, as God is in the eternal now. If the Spirit were always united with God in this power, the man could never grow old. For that now, in which God made the first man, and the now, in which the last man will have his end, and the now, in which I am now talking, They are all the same in God. And there is not more than one now. Now, you can see that this man lives in one light with God, and therefore there is not in him either suffering or the passage of time, but an unchanging eternity. From this man, truly, all wonderment has been taken away, and all things are essentially present in him. Therefore, nothing new will come to him out of future events or accidents, for he dwells always anew in a now, without ceasing. Such a divine lordship is there in this power. There is another power that is also not of the body. It flows of the Spirit and remains in the Spirit and is wholly spiritual. In this power, God is ceaselessly gleaming and burning with all God's riches, with all God's sweetness, and with all God's joy. Truly, there is such delight and such great immeasurable joy that in this power that no one can tell or reveal it all. But I say, if there were a single man who were to contemplate rationally and truly in this for an instant, the joy and the delight that is in there, everything that he could have suffered and that God would have wished for him to suffer would be for him too little and indeed nothing. And I say more, it would always be his joy and his ease. If you really want to know whether your sufferings are your own or are God's, this is what you should observe. If you suffer for your own sake, however this may be, the suffering hurts you and is hard for you to bear. But if you suffer for God's sake and for God's sake alone, then the suffering will not hurt you and will not be hard for you, because God is carrying the burden. This is really true. If there were a man who wanted to suffer for the love of God and purely for God alone, if all the suffering came on him at once, that all men have ever suffered in the whole world and it has it as its common lot, that would not hurt him or be hard for him, because it would be God who was carrying the burden. If someone loaded 100 weight on my neck and then someone else supported it on my neck, I should be as glad to carry 100 of them as one, because it would not be hard for me. It would not hurt me at all. In a few words, whatever a man suffers for the love of God and for God alone, God makes this easy and sweet for him. As I said at the beginning when we started our sermon, Jesus went up to a little town and was received by a virgin who was a wife. Why? It must necessarily be that she was a virgin and also a wife. Now, I have told you that Jesus was received, but I have not said to you what the little town is. But I want to talk about this now. I have sometimes said that there is a power in the Spirit that alone is free. Sometimes I have said that it is a guard of the Spirit. Sometimes I have said that it is a light of the Spirit. Sometimes I have said that it is a spark. But now I say that it is neither this nor that, and yet it is a something that is higher above this and that than heaven is above the earth. And therefore I now give it finer names than I have ever given it before. And yet whatever fine names, whatever words we use, they are telling lies, and it is far above them. It is free of all names. It is bare of all forms, wholly empty and free, as God in God's self is empty and free. It is so utterly one and simple, as God is one and simple, that man cannot in any way look into it. The same power of which I have spoken in which God is verdant and growing with all God's divinity, and the Spirit in God, with this same power, is the Father bringing to birth his only begotten Son, as truly as in him himself. For he truly lives in this power, and the Spirit with the Father brings to birth the same only begotten Son, and it begets itself the same Son, and is the same Son in this light, and it is the truth. If you could look upon this with my heart, you would well understand what I say, for it is true, and it is truth's own self that says it. And now see and pay heed. This little town about which I am talking, and which I have in mind, is the soul, so one and so simple, far above what can be described, and that this noble power about which I have spoken is not worthy, even once for an instant, to look into this little town, and the other power, too, of which we spoke, in which God is gleaming and burning with all God's riches and with all God's joy, and also does not ever dare to look into it. This little town is so truly one and simple, and this simple one is so exalted above every manner and every power, that no power, no manner, not God, God's self, may look at all. It is as true that this is true, and that I speak truly, as that God is alive. God, God's self, never for an instant looks into it. Never yet did he look on it, so far as God possesses God's self in the manner and according to the properties of God's persons. It is well to observe this, because this simple one is without manner and without properties. And therefore, if God were ever to look upon it, that must cost him all his divine names and the properties of his persons, and he must wholly forsake if he is ever once to look into it. But as he is simply one, without any manner and properties, he is not Father or Son or Holy Spirit, and yet he is something that is neither this nor that. Observe that as he is one and simple, so he comes into the one, which in the soul I have called a little town, and he does not come into it in any other way, but so he comes there, and so he is there. In this part the soul is like to God, and not otherwise. What I have said to you is true. I call the truth to witness this, and I lay my soul as a pledge, that we may also be a little town into which Jesus may come and be received and remain forever in us in the way that I have said. May God help us to this. Amen.